Poland doesn't trust anyone. Not Brussels, not NATO, not the United States. At least not completely. If history has taught the Poles anything, it's that trusting others ends up being costly. For centuries, its territory was invaded, divided among powers, and even wiped off the map. These wounds are still fresh today, and Warsaw is clear about one thing. Never again will it depend entirely on others to guarantee its security. Not on Brussels, Berlin, or Paris, and not on Washington either. And this is something they are clear about, regardless of who is in charge. Morawiecki or Tusk, Duda or Nawrocki. It's a true national consensus. You see, in Warsaw, that old fear of being abandoned again has resurfaced. Yes, Poland wants alliances, but the bottom line is that no one should decide their future for them again, because the scenario for Poland is disturbing. For decades, it was perhaps the most pro-Washington country in Europe. It joined NATO in 1999 and the European Union in 2004, and since then has hosted thousands of US soldiers and defense systems such as the Patriot and NATO's missile shield. In fact, Poles have the best opinion of the United States of any country in Europe. But for some time now, things have started to become a little different. These days, there's one question hanging in the air in Poland that is echoing everywhere. What if the United States abandons us? What if, in the worst case scenario, our fate could once again be left in the hands of an agreement between major powers, similar to the Yalta Agreement? Well, that fear explains a lot of what Warsaw is doing right now. For years, the Poles have been following a kind of dual strategy. On one hand, pushing their European partners to spend more on defense and get much more involved in securing the eastern flank. Meanwhile, courting Washington with a whole range of strategies that we'll break down for you in this video, and which, in some cases, go against what the rest of Europe is doing. And above all, what they'll never neglect is their own defense. For example, by 2026, Poland will be the second country in Europe with the highest defense spending relative to GDP, only behind Estonia at nearly 5%.
Poland to lift defense spending to 4.8% of GDP next year.
The point is that beyond the numbers, what we're really seeing is a very well-planned strategy by Warsaw. By the end of 2025, Warsaw will have invested so much in tanks, fighter jets, and artillery that its ground forces will become the most powerful in Europe. But the Poles are not just buying weapons. Prime Minister Donald Tusk has launched a Swiss-style civil defense program. 1 month of paid military training for any citizen who wants it. By 2027, 100,000 volunteers a year are expected to take these courses, and the message is clear. The whole of society must be prepared to defend itself, and it's not just about fear, but also ambition. What's interesting in all this is that Poland is playing between Brussels and Washington because it does not fully trust either of them. With Brussels, there have been constant conflicts, judicial independence, immigration, climate policies, and with the United States, as I mentioned, the question is more existential. What if one day a president decides that Europe is no longer a priority? Clearly, some of Donald Trump's recent moves don't exactly help them sleep peacefully either.
U.S. to start European troop withdrawal discussions later this year, U.S. NATO ambassador says.
So, here on VisualPolitik, we put ourselves in Poland's shoes, and we're going to tell you everything that this country, which is being called the next guardian of Europe, is really up to. This is Warsaw's strategy for survival. Whatever the cost, pay attention. Before we dive in, let me ask you, how often do you actually feel safe online? Because here's the truth. Going incognito doesn't really make you invisible. Your internet provider, your workplace, even your home Wi-Fi router, all of them can still track everything you do. That's where CyberGhost VPN comes in, the sponsor of today's video. And it's not just any VPN. CyberGhost is one of the most trusted VPNs out there, with over 38 million users worldwide and more than 20,000 glowing reviews on Trustpilot. It hides your IP address and encrypts your data, so your browsing stays solely your business. Even CyberGhost doesn't keep logs of what you're doing. It's super easy to use. Just pick a location, they have over 100 available, turn it on, and you're protected. You can even unlock content that's not available in your country from over 40 platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. Traveling or working remotely, CyberGhost also helps you avoid sketchy public Wi-Fi risks, and even score better deals online by changing your virtual location. It works on pretty much everything: phone, phones, laptops, tablets, even your smart TV and console. And one subscription covers up to 7 devices, so it's perfect for sharing. The best part, right now with the link in the description, you'll get a whopping 84% off, just $2.03 a month and 4 extra months free. It's risk-free too, with a 45-day money-back guarantee, so there's nothing to lose. Go ahead, protect your digital life. Click the link, try CyberGhost, and stay one step ahead online.
Playing on 3 fronts.
If there's one thing Poland knows all too well, it's that when you don't write your own score, others will write it for you. That's why, for years, Warsaw hasn't waited for Brussels to make the decisions, or for the White House to remember them. Instead, they've made it a point to be in Washington every single day, to build their own counterweight and influence inside the European Union, and to invest in their own strength. But the question is, how have they done this? Well, let's start with the United States. Pay close attention to these words from Donald Trump just a few days ago.
We'll put more there if they want, but they've long wanted to have a larger presence staying in Poland. We're very much aligned with Poland.
Wait, is Trump saying not only that his troops will stay in Poland, but that they'll send more if the Poles want them? This is a little strange, because just a few weeks ago, the United States announced a plan to cut defense spending in the Baltic states, countries that, until now, were as pro-US as Poland and spend more than anyone else on defense.
European countries near Russia puzzled by US plans to cut defense funding.
With Poland, however, the opposite is happening. We have the new Polish president whose first trip abroad was to the White House. That in itself is significant. And then we have Trump basically saying that the Poles won't be lacking anything. In other words, a full-on special treatment. And the question is, why? Well, let's just say that Poland has played its cards very well here. It's no secret that in Washington, the European Union is seen as a bloc that is politically out of step with US interests, from disinvestment in defense to energy policies, to all kinds of regulations and obstacles for American companies. Brussels does not get much sympathy, and even less so from the Trump administration. But Poland, it appears Poland has managed to do things differently. The fact is that in Washington, it's not who shouts the loudest that counts, but who knows how to play their cards right. For example, the Polish embassy in Washington is one of the largest and best staffed of all European countries. To give you an idea, its diplomatic mission has dozens of people dedicated to building networks of contacts, both with congressmen and senators and within American think tanks, in order to align themselves with US interests. Their commitment is so great that they have announced the purchase of a new building with more space and closer to the Capitol and the White House than the current one.
Poland buys new embassy building in Washington. The building in a prestigious area near the White House, the US State Department, and Capitol Hill was acquired for just over $20 million.
And for a country like Poland, which is still developing and has a fifth of Germany's GDP, this is something that attracts attention. And the question is, why? Well, mainly for 3 reasons. The first, something that is fundamental for Warsaw and which they have done very well, ensuring that it has a solid networking capacity within the United States. This is what some call the Polish lobby. The Polish government hires US firms considered to be lobbyists, such as BGR or Park Strategies. And why? Well, for example, to advise them on strategic communication with the US government, or to inform congressmen and the White House about the Polish position. And not only that, but also to close arms deals, such as the Wisła or Patriot anti-missile system, or HIMARS rockets, securing technology transfers and ensuring that part of the production is manufactured in Poland. The second thing they do is open doors on many fronts at once. They talk to congressmen from both parties, the White House and the Pentagon, as well as think tanks, universities, and the media to get their message of security and cooperation with NATO across. In this way, the Polish government manages to put itself in the spotlight and become a country that matters to the United States. It's a kind of strategic political marketing, and it works. And thirdly, to put a little pressure on the government in power. These lobbies seek to increase the US military presence in Poland with ideas that may sound familiar to you, such as Fort Trump. This is the name Poland itself gave to its proposal to install a permanent US military base on its territory, even offering to finance it, although this has not yet been approved. But that's not even all. Poland, through the networks managed by its embassy, also focuses on maintaining constant contact with its diaspora, which is not small. We're talking about 8 million Americans of Polish descent, 8 million people who vote. This community could eventually serve to ensure that politicians seeking election take Poland into account in their proposals. So it is yet another element of pressure. And bear in mind that a large part of this diaspora lives in swing states such as Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and they play such an important role in some elections that even Kamala Harris addressed them directly in her debate with Trump.
Why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor, and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch?
Obviously, this kind of thing doesn't happen by chance, but because, as I just told you, the Polish government works behind the scenes quietly to bring its concerns and strategic interests into the circles of power. But obviously, this alone does not explain everything. As we told you earlier, Warsaw is not only playing the American card, but several. And within the European Union itself, they have also managed to create their own sphere of influence, with the potential to rival even the Paris-Berlin axis. Oh, you think I'm exaggerating? Let's see. If there's one thing Warsaw is clear about, it's that it's not going to sit idly by and watch others make decisions for it, especially when those others, basically France and Germany, don't seem to understand what the Russian threat really means for Poland. Well, precisely to rival this axis, Poland, along with Croatia, presented its own plan 10 years ago, the Three Seas Initiative. The initiative is so named because it brings together 13 European countries situated between 3 different seas: the Baltic Sea to the north, the Black Sea to the southeast, and the Adriatic Sea to the southwest. We're talking about Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, the Czech Republic, Romania, and Greece. So what exactly is it? Well, it's a platform created in 2015 designed to promote economic growth in the region and reduce its energy dependence on Russia. That's why its 3 key types of projects are transport, telecommunications, and energy. It should be noted, however, that it's not yet a new international organization, but rather an informal platform, something like a political forum. To date, it has promoted more than 100 projects in various stages of development. For example, one of the most important projects currently underway is Rail to Sea, the creation of a railway line between the port of Gdansk in Poland and Constanta in Romania. It would cross 4 countries: Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and finally Romania. A project that has taken on special significance since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The reason, as well as improving freight and passenger transport, it would allow for the rapid and massive transport of weapons, tanks, howitzers, and everything else between these countries, all of which are also members of NATO. Something like the Rail Baltica in the Baltics, but in a Polish-Romanian version. Now, you may be wondering, okay, but what does this have to do with becoming an alternative axis to Paris, Berlin, and Brussels? Well, in short, the Three Seas Initiative gives Poland an agenda, infrastructure projects, and funding management to weave a more autonomous Central and Eastern European coalition without leaving the framework of the Union. For example, in 2015, it hosted the 10th summit, in which 23 states and the European Commission participated. This gives Poland the ability to set its own priorities in energy, transport, and even security, and to develop common positions in a region that will be crucial for the European Union. It even has its own funding, the Three Seas Initiative Investment Fund, created in 2019. It now has around 1.3 billion euros, which allows it to expand its influence over which projects are prioritized. And by the way, do you know who else has financed this fund? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that's right, the United States. Washington was initially expected to put $1 billion into this initiative, although in the end it has settled for $300 million. But wait, the mere fact that Washington is financing a mainly Polish initiative for Central and Eastern Europe gives you another idea of how much confidence Washington has in Warsaw, and how aligned they are, don't you think? And that's not all. Along with this initiative, there is another factor to consider: Ukraine. If Ukraine ends up joining the European Union one day, everything points to the capital having the most influence on Kyiv being neither Paris nor Berlin, but Warsaw. And bear in mind, we're talking about a country with a population of around 38 million, which would have enormous voting power in Brussels, and which, added to Poland and other countries in the initiative, would turn Poland's sphere of influence into a bloc of around 100 million people. Not bad, right? Well, we wouldn't be telling you the whole story if we left out what is perhaps the most important piece, the key tool that Poland currently has at its disposal, its enormous military push. And here we come to the third thing Poland is doing to secure its own power. We mentioned this at the beginning of the video. Next year, Poland will spend 4.8% of its GDP on defense, and that is truly staggering. It's the largest relative effort in terms of GDP in all of Europe, except for small republics such as Estonia. We're talking about no less than 55 billion by 2026. Poland is clear about this. Prime Minister Donald Tusk wants Europe to get its act together and stop outsourcing its defense to the United States, with Washington serving only as a backup. With this increase in defense spending, Tusk wants to create a force of 500,000 troops, including a large reserve force. To give you an idea, they currently have around 200,000 soldiers. We're talking about a country where 3/4 of Poles want to increase military spending. In other words, there is practically a national consensus on this. The mistrust generated by the Trump administration is total. In fact, in a survey conducted in 23 countries last year, Poland emerged as the most pro-American country in the world. 93% of Poles had a positive image of Uncle Sam. But now, despite what we've told you, less than a third of Poles believe that the United States is a reliable partner.
Poles will not adopt the philosophy that we are completely powerless and helpless if President Trump has decided to adjust policy.
The fact is that there is a clear plan. To start with, to create a force of 100,000 reservists, a plan they want to have up and running by next year. But why does Poland want to create a force of 100,000 reservists? Well, we'll probably find the answer, once again, by looking at Ukraine. These so-called territorial defense forces of Ukraine have been a key part of containing the Russian invasion. Poland has had similar territorial defense forces since 2017, with about 40,000 troops. But now, they want to expand them much further. What can I say? Betting on this model, in addition to a permanent professional force, makes perfect sense, especially when we consider that Warsaw's plan goes much further, because they need to more than double the number of soldiers to 500,000. But here's the thing, if everything we've told you so far already sounds important, hang on, because there's more. There's something Poland is doing with all this money, as if there were no tomorrow. That's right, buying weapons. And above all, from two countries, South Korea and, bingo, you guessed it, the United States. In the first case, Poland has become the largest foreign customer of the South Korean military industry, and not by a small margin. In 2022, Warsaw signed a mammoth order, $12.4 billion of K2 tanks, K9 howitzers, FA-50 fighter jets, and Chunmoo rocket launchers. Poland has already committed to purchasing 360 South Korean tanks alone, and bear in mind that the framework agreement would allow this to be stretched to 1,000 units if it's executed in full. In other words, Poland is building an army of steel made in Korea. Poland will have the largest fleet of modern tanks in Europe, if we count others it already has, such as the Leopard, or the 366 Abrams it's beginning to receive. Incidentally, it's the only European buyer of this American beast, a tank that is extremely expensive to maintain and operate. So in total, we're talking about more than 1,000 tanks, between 4 and 5 times more than Germany or France. It's crazy. And this, along with other plans that have just been launched with the US defense industry, will turn Poland into a true European military bastion that will give Warsaw enormous leverage.
Poland signs multi-billion euro contract to upgrade F-16 fleet. Poland signs $2 billion air defense deal with US.
Also, don't forget that Warsaw is also building its own defensive wall, the so-called Eastern Shield. What does this consist of? Basically, fortifying its entire eastern border with Belarus and the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. The budget, at least $2.5 billion. It's a strip about 200 meters wide, filled with anti-drone towers, seismic sensors, and curious gas-filled balloons known as reconnaissance aerostats. The aim is to detect enemy movements more than 300 kilometers away. It's like having a giant eye floating above the border. And that's not all. There will also be reinforced concrete hedges, bunkers, reinforced bridges, roads adapted for military transport, and yes, perhaps soon mines as well. All to slow down, deter, or directly prevent any enemy incursion. Anyway, you get the picture. This is the way Poland has decided that it will not leave its security in the hands of others. A three-pronged strategy that involves sweet-talking the United States into keeping its forces in Poland, creating its own sphere of influence within the European Union, and building a very powerful army that will allow it, if necessary, to defend itself. This is what Warsaw has been doing for years, regardless of who is in power. It's a true state policy which, given the background, now makes perfect sense. Now that we come this far, I want to hear your opinion. Do you think Poland is doing the right thing by playing both sides to guarantee its security? Do you think Warsaw will manage to position itself as a true power in Europe with all these maneuvers? We look forward to your comments below. And once again, a big thank you to CyberGhost for sponsoring this video. For just $2.03 a month, you get full protection for your data and unrestricted access to blocked content around the world. Remember, you can try it completely risk-free thanks to their 45-day money-back guarantee. And by signing up, you're also helping support our content. Click the link in the description below. And if you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to VisualPolitik so you don't miss any news. It's free for you and helps us out a lot. Thank you so very much for being there. All the best. I'll see you next time.